Right. So sticking with Serie A action, okay? So remember, Roma will be facing Inter Milan, right, on Saturday night, and that will be a true test of Daniele De Rossi's mettle, right? Because the first few games of Daniele De Rossi's tenure were wins, right? Good wins, but expected wins. So now the real test will come, against Scudetto favorites Inter Milan. It is now on the horizon at the Stadio Olimpico in Rome, the capital of Italy. So that will actually be a true test of whether Daniele De Rossi can actually continue, with this impressive 100% record that he has actually, had since he started being the permanent manager of AS Roma following the sacking of the special one, Jose Mourinho. So Daniele De Rossi's managerial tenure with Roma has all been sunshine and rainbows up until this point, right? So it's a 100% win record, a revitalized Lorenzo Pellegrini, two intriguing signings in Angelino, as well as Tommaso Baldanzi, and a convincing 4-0 victory over Cagliari, and all will make it clear, that maybe the Giallorossi did need a change at the top, right? And yet, as much as Roma has looked, intriguingly like a Champions League quality side since the hiring of the Capitano Futuro, right, as he's fondly known by the AS Roma supporters, right? So the added risk, attached to all the success is that the simple fact that Roma hasn't played any side of consequences in the past month. So this was probably an international move on the part of the Friedkin group, the owners of AS Roma, as well as, after all, if you want to give a new manager time to get used to his role, you have to give him a couple of matches that are likely to be victories. So that actually improves the morale of his side as well as the morale of the fans, and gives the manager a longer leash if and when things go south. So that honeymoon period for De Rossi is likely over starting from tomorrow, as Giallorossi host league leaders Inter Milan and likely Scudetto winners Inter Milan at the Stadio Olimpico. And let's be honest, from this particular moment, I might be expecting a draw, perhaps a draw or loss for Roma. Because Inter Milan are way too strong for Roma. So the best result that Roma can actually get out of this particular encounter, this highly anticipated encounter with Inter Milan at the Stadio Olimpico, is the fact that, look, I think a draw will be the best for them, because I don't see them beating, Inter Milan, right? The informed Inter Milan season, because remember, Inter Milan have only lost once this season and they've only drawn 3 times, right? So jumping from the likes of Cagliari as well as Hellas Verona, Salernitana, as to playing a team that could very well make the Champions League final this season is like jumping straight from the mildest hot sauce onto the hot ones to the last dab. So you have to understand that you will actually endure a lot of pain and you're probably going to cry. So that's on the side. I'm referring to AS Roma. It's not going to be a simple one. So the best result that they can actually get out of this encounter against Inter Milan is actually a draw. A draw will be, the best for them, because I don't really see them beating Inter Milan. I don't. Even though it's a home game for them, I don't see them winning, so collecting all 3 points for the strong Inter Milan side. Because, given, these low expectations for the game against Inter Milan on Saturday night, I'm mostly looking at the Giallorossi, to play, competently, against Inter. A win, draw, or a tight loss where Roma, takes good chances and defends well will give me more hope for Daniele De Rossi's continued employment in Rome after the end of the season and drubbing. And I'm pretty sure that the Friedkin group will be looking for a new manager when the summer window opens, and those are likely the stakes. But I'm still going for an Inter Milan with victory tomorrow. I don't see AS Roma being able to, beat this strong Inter Milan side, right? But I do smell goals. I smell a lot of goals. That's what I can tell you. Because the good news for Daniele De Rossi is that, his side is actually getting closer and closer to full strength. While Ivan Indika is still playing at AFCON, good luck to the Ivory Coast in the final. Sada Azmoun has returned to the club following Iran's loss to Qatar in the Asian Cup semi-final. Azmoun, certainly left a mark on the competition and was nearly the difference maker for Iran in their quest to get to the final. Just, take a look at his sweet goal that he scored in the semi-final. Remember that wonderful strike that he netted in the semi-final was incredible. So, you just cannot take your eyes off that, Roma defense, because that Roma defense is actually solid. Although they have their two best international players, on duty at the Asian Cup as well as the African Cup of Nations. And obviously remember, while, Azmoun, is likely disappointing that his run at the Asian Cup, is particularly over, because I'm sure him and his fellow international teammates, his compatriots, were aiming for glory at the Asian Cup. But, it happens in football. And his return to the AS Roma camp will actually be an advantage for the home side going into the clash against Inter Milan, because, he will be available against Inter Milan, definitely. And Andrea Bellotti has been sent on loan at Fiorentina, and Tammy Abraham is scheduled to return to full training, in a month. So Roma is short on strikers without Azmoun, while he won't actually be a starter for Roma against Inter, because the Iranian forward will hopefully, continue to be a burst of energy and fresh air off the bench for Daniele De Rossi, as he was for Jose Mourinho. So matches between two big sides are often decided in the dying minutes of the second half. Another thing what we could actually say is that, Azmoun, he has shown incredible ability, to be a difference maker in those spot minutes, because don't be surprised if the reason Roma gets a positive result against Inter Milan is that Sadar provides a bit of the same magic he offered for the Iranian national team for the Giallorossi. So it will actually be an interesting game of football to actually witness between Roma and Inter Milan at the Stadio Olimpico. And look, man, can Roma pull off a possible upset? I can't even believe that I might be saying it's an upset, because look, remember, Roma is also a good team. They're a big club, but in this current circumstances, based on their season so far, Inter Milan are the overwhelming favorites going into Saturday night's clash at the Stadio Olimpico, because I don't think it's actually an overstatement to suggest that, Tommaso Baldanzi's signing might be one of those most important non-superstar signings Roma has completed since the beginning of the decade. But, the Italy under-21 is tipped by many to be the future number 10 for the Azzurri. And even in a tough situation at Empoli, Baldanzi showed himself to have, the class necessary to shine. And despite all that promise, it's actually a good thing. It's actually a good thing to say that, for the Giallorossi as well as the Baldanzi, that he doesn't have to be the next Paulo Dybala right away in Rome, because instead we could actually say that Daniele De Rossi, he has that intention of, slowly but surely integrating Baldanzi into a side via consistent substitute appearances. So this is undoubtedly the right move for the attacking midfielder, because it allows him to understand the tactical differences between playing for a side like Roma compared to playing for a side like Empoli. And it allows him to actually use his fresher legs, to great effect, against tired sides, who nevertheless have had their match against Roma circled on their calendar for months. And just as Azmoun could be the difference maker for the Giallorossi, in the clash against Inter Milan, we can also look at Baldanzi, as a potential, super sub difference maker in the fight for a positive result against Inter Milan. So, yeah, man. But I'm going for a 2-1 victory for Inter Milan, away from home, right? It's going to be a 2-1 victory for Inter Milan, and yeah, definitely they're going to increase their lead at the top, of the table. Yeah. Okay, so AS Roma 2, Inter Milan 4. So yeah, let's pretty much recap the game, right, and what actually took place. It was an interesting game of football. I loved it. It was basically a game of two halves, right? It was a game of two halves. So what I actually mean by the fact that I say it was a game of two halves, I actually mean the fact that, both teams had their moment. Like when I say first half, it was Roma's moment. And then second half, it was Inter Milan's moment. So that's why I'm saying it was basically like a game of two halves. Because look, it was basically like an up and down evening, which did see the home side of the Giallorossi, grab a 2-1 first half lead, before completely deflating in the second half and actually falling 4-2, to the league leading team, Inter Milan. And I told you all, guys, that Inter Milan were going to win this game, right? But Roma almost surprised me. Roma almost pulled off a surprise. Roma they caught me off guard because that first half performance was spectacular. It was great to watch that first half performance from the home side because, look, with 3 wins to actually start his tenure, right, as the AS Roma manager, Daniele De Rossi, as well as he had the Giallorossi flying high, because you look at how Daniele De Rossi, he has actually enable Roma to actually play an efficient and infectious, brand of football. And you look at the legendary midfielder, he has benefited from a relatively soft spot in the club's fixture list, making this particular, encounter against Inter Milan, a tilt, against the log leading side, the log leaders. And it was actually like his toughest test of his young managerial career, right? But Mother Nature wouldn't actually make it easier for De Rossi either because the pitch was not in good condition. Remember, the pitch at the Stadio Olimpico, it actually pelted down with rain throughout the entire game. But nevertheless, Daniele De Rossi's team, took an initiative early in the match, nearly stealing an early lead when Inter Milan goalkeeper Jan Sommer, barely parried away Stefan El Shaarawy's killed effort in the first minute of the game. And then what we also saw, we saw another opportunity with Lorenzo Pellegrini following up, with a well-placed shot from distance. But he was actually unfortunate to see his attempt sail, just high off the mark, right? And you look again, the ensuing, 10 to 15 minutes of the game, you would actually see, Roma's energy wax and wane. But despite the rain, the pressure, and the quality of the opponent, the Capitals clubs, their resolve, they held firm in their resolve, actually. You understand? Because, as often the case, matches like these, tend to have margins. There's always the slightest of margins, and those margins often, rest in terms of set pieces, right? Because when you look at this particular encounter, right, Roma, they did well to actually thwart a 17th minute corner kick, because Romelu Lukaku's headed clearance inadvertently fell straight to, Francesco Acerbi at the left edge of the box. But with the former Lazio man doing well to actually place a looped header over Rui Patricio's head at the opposite post. And in the past, Roma may have hung their heads, waiting for a miracle to appear out of thin air. Instead of relying on false hope, the Giallorossi struck back, using Lorenzo Pellegrini's dead ball expertise, to actually level the match as the Roma skipper, picked out Gianluca Mancini with an expertly placed free kick from distance, finding Mancini at the far left post, from beyond 20 yards. So that was incredible to actually watch, because, we all know that Lorenzo Pellegrini, he is a dead ball specialist. He's a set piece specialist. We've seen him in the past, what he has been able to do from set pieces for AS Roma. And, he has proven his quality. He has proven that, quality, he still possesses that, incredible quality. And, it's also another factor of the fact that, class is permanent when it comes to certain players. Which of the players who possess the pedigree of, Lorenzo Pellegrini. And you look at Roma and Inter, they will trade barbs for the next 20 minutes or so. And just when it seemed like the two sides would head into the break level, Pellegrini struck again. This time threading a pass to, a streaking El Shaarawy down the left channel. While El Shaarawy shot initially, struck the woodwork, he caught a lucky break when it caromed into the opposite post past a helpless Sommer, putting Roma on top, 2-1 at halftime. So, basically the former AC Milan winger scoring against, his former side's bitter rivals. Although, fortune wouldn't last for AS Roma. The fortune would eventually come to an end because, look, man, like I said, second half we knew that Inter Milan were going to prove their quality once again because, remember, now you're going into the halftime break. Yes, it's a slender advantage, you're playing at home, but against the log leaders, man, it's never going to be easy because they're going to fight back. And that's exactly what Inter Milan did because, fortune didn't last for the 65,000 supporters in attendance, let's say excluding the Inter Milan supporters, you look at the Giallorossi, they did well, to win the battle, in terms of like most of the elements of the game, not to mention Inter Milan's midfields, but look, their spirit was broken by Marcus Thuram, who ran past Roma defenders to actually latch on to Matteo Darmian's pass in the 49th minute, effectively taking the wind out of Roma's sails. And still, with the match, knotted at 2 apiece, and after 40 minutes to play, Roma had ample time to actually regain the lead, but it wasn't, it wasn't their night. I mentioned this before that, the Giallorossi, they would actually need a miracle, to actually keep up with this incredible performance that they actually displayed in the first half because, you need to continue, keeping it up with that performance until the final whistle. Because look, 7 minutes after Marcus Thuram leveled the match, he struck again in the 56th minute, finding space at the near post and more or less forcing Angelino into an own goal as the diminutive Spanish defender tried in vain, to actually clear the ball, but instead, he saw it deflect off his heel and into the back of the net. And Marcus Thuram has been on fine form this season since signing from, Borussia Mönchengladbach. And, that partnership between himself and Lautaro Martinez has been nothing but spectacular. What an incredible combination, and what an incredible signing that, the Nerazzurri, made in Marcus Thuram because he actually is proving his worth. He's proving a menace to the opposition, in this season's Italian Serie A. Right, he has actually been a key figure for Inter Milan this season because look, that's not to say that Roma actually didn't create any chances at the other end, but unfortunately for the home side, they were just unable to convert, and a fact underscored by Romelu Lukaku's inability to convert a vertical one-on-one opportunity against Soma late in the match. And look, Inter, unfortunately, as for AS Roma, they would be punished later on as Inter would tack on an insurance goal in stoppage time before walking away with all three deserved points. And Roma actually fought well in the first half, showing some spirit and the previous 3 matches. But, in the end, this match was only settled by one thing and one thing only. Inter's top players showed up and Roma's didn't. Dybala did not show up. Romelu Lukaku did not show up. Pellegrini, he only showed up in the first half. El Shaarawy did not necessarily show up. So, despite the fact that he got the second goal, but performance-wise, I'm not really convinced at all. He really did not show up. But look, the first half was genuinely exciting. Roma, they were genuinely exciting in the first half. I mean to say they were so exciting. It was such a great match to watch in the first half. And what I can actually say is the fact that, look, AS Roma can actually take a lot of, positives from this particular encounter. They can actually take so much from this encounter because they started so well. The first half, they were, on sublime form. Because, look, there are certain things that I feel like we should look at from this particular encounter, because you look at Daniele De Rossi. This is was his first defeat. This is his first defeat in his managerial career. And what we could actually look at, is the fact that, with a perfect, 3-0 start to his tenure, right? Daniele De Rossi, put Roma back on track in the midst of difficult waters. However, it has been pointed out that, De Rossi's side, only had they only had, to best 3 of the bottom 4 sides in Serie A. And, something Mourinho's most ardent supporters pointed out that he would have done as well. Nevertheless, whatever side of the argument, certain people might fall on, or you guys as the viewers might fall on, we can all agree that the log leaders Inter would be the first true test of De Rossi's managerial acumen, right? Because look, would he have his side up for the log leaders both mentally and tactically? Because you look at the fact that, look, Roma started the game so well, but as it's all said and done, Inter did defeat Roma 4-2, right, away from home. But not all defeats are created equally, and we break down the good and the bad from this particular encounter, right? Plus, you also have to look ahead to Roma's Thursday Europa League playoff match against Feyenoord. So let me give you guys my thoughts on this particular encounter, right? Roma started the game very well, right? They were able to contain Inter Milan, So it was basically the fact that, look, even after going behind, right, they showed character in terms of coming back into the game, They came back from a goal down and they actually led 2-1. So, but one thing that they were not actually good at doing is that it was just a matter of asking yourself a question: how long could they contain Inter Milan? How long could they actually manage this lead? Because a one-goal lead is not enough, right? The fact that they were also able to create chances, they were able to actually create a lot of good chances. We saw even in the second half they did, but unfortunately they just did not convert. They were just not converting their chances. That's exactly what Inter Milan did in today's game. Inter Milan converted their chances. Any real chance that Inter Milan had, they converted. And that's one thing AS Roma need to really work on. Because the fact that they have resilience, AS Roma, they have got that fighting spirit. You could see there's so much progress, right? But the one thing that is not there, that they really need to work on, is the defending. Defense is very poor, right? They give away too many balls in that midfield. That midfield is always caught napping. Okay? That's one thing they need to also work on. And another thing that they need to work on is conversion. They really need to convert more of their chances. That's something that they haven't done. They failed to do, AS Roma. So those are the kind of things that they really need to work on more. If they are to actually finish the season on a high, perhaps finish in a Europe spot, qualify for European football next season. Because I think to say that they can still qualify for the Champions League next season, it's far-fetched, right? I think they're far off the pace. But I think Europa League is one thing they can aim for currently. So those are the kind of things that they have to work on. And congratulations once again to Inter Milan, because now they're 7 points above Juventus in second place. And look, it can only get better and better for Inter Milan from this point onwards. It can only get better and better. Okay, again, in the Italian Serie A action, right? We're gonna head straight to Italy, right? Serie A action. This was a game that was on my weekend radio, right? This was a much anticipated clash, right, between AC Milan as well as Napoli at the San Siro, right? So we all know that, okay, this was a massive encounter for both sides, because remember, Napoli haven't had the best of seasons, right? And as well as we could also say AC Milan haven't been consistent this season, but despite the fact that they are well in contention of actually winning the, Italian Scudetto, right? So you just cannot count them out as yet, because luckily, as for AC Milan, the hosts, they were able to edge, a big hitting Serie A encounter as Theo Hernandez, he netted the winner, right? The brilliant French left back, he has actually been key for AC Milan, man, this season. He has been, a workhorse, you understand? He has been, the pivotal player in this AC Milan squad, because AC Milan were able to edge out Napoli in their highly anticipated heavy-hitting Serie A encounter on Sunday evening, right? And that goal by Theo Hernandez, actually proved to only be the only goal of the game, and actually be the winning goal for the Rossoneri at home. And unfortunately, Napoli, they just could not master a response when it mattered in the second half. And the hosts, they were able just to consolidate and actually defend their slender advantage and actually see out the crucial victory in front of their home fans, right? So it was actually an important victory for AC Milan, right? Because like I said, they've been inconsistent this season, and remember, they still need to really ensure that they secure some Champions League football for next season. Remember, they're still out of the Champions League. They will be partaking in the Europa League knockout stages, right? And that Theo Hernandez goal, proved to be the difference, in a tight, let me say it like this, in a tight but entertaining, affair between AC Milan as well as, Napoli, right? And it actually saw the hosts unbeaten in Serie A in 2024. So currently AC Milan are still unbeaten in 2024 in the Serie A so far. And that's actually an incredible record. That's the best way, to actually, make an incredible start to the year and actually keep intact an unbeaten record at home to actually ensure that, you get your season back on track. Because now the second half of the season is actually going to be crucial for the Rossoneri, in terms of them, whether they will be able to actually compete for the title, whether they will actually be able to compete to actually finish in the Champions League spots, secure some UCL football next season, or maybe because remember the fact that they are out of the Italian Cup. You understand? So the only bit of silverware that they still have currently right now is the UEFA Europa League as well as the Italian Serie A. So right now they need to really, make amends for their inconsistent run in the first half of the season, and for the fact that they are out of the Champions League, and for the fact that they are also out of the Italian Cup. Remember, they were knocked out at home by Atalanta, who are the semi-finalists currently in, the Italian Cup, right? And right now, Malta Mazzari experimented with the 3-5-1-1, from kickoff, right? Which actually gave, it actually gave, the Napoli target man. Remember now that with the absence of Victor Osimhen, who was actually on national duty for the Super Eagles at the African Cup of Nations in Cote d'Ivoire, it actually gave Kivishka, Kvaratskhelia, Napoli saviors last time, a free role behind Giovanni Simeone, and the Georgian, was his side's most dangerous threat from early on in the game. He almost set up the striker to hit the opener, but after that, the shot slammed into the post, and Napoli struggled to break down their host, who took advantage after 25 minutes, when Theo Hernandez finished off a clinical counter-attack for the game's only goal. Right, that was a great counter-attack from the Rossoneri, and very clinical indeed, because you do make those chances count. That's how you punish your opponents, for not actually taking their chances. And after that, I think Napoli needed a quick response, and basically their response was the fact that they even reverted to a 4-3-3, formation after the break, and it was a wonder, right, that the second half remained scoreless with both sides, creating plenty of chances as the game broke open. And, ultimately, AC Milan, held on and moved just 1 point behind Juventus, for at least 24 hours with, both on tonight's teams returning to European action in the next fortnight, while Milan, will hope to convert more of their chances into goals against Rennes in the Europa League playoff round, but they should take heart from the manner that they cut Napoli open after time, right? And Sami Chukwueze, who he's also set to return, but Hernandez's goal, the result, of some slick interplay between fullback Olivier Giroud as well as, Rafael Leao, seemed to ignite the hosts after the first quarter, and they could have even added, to their single goal, before the break, right? And on the side of Napoli, their reset, took both midfielders, out of the game for periods of end-to-end second half. But AC Milan, they still had the better chances of the game, though they directed one of their own goal when, Giancarlo Simic, was just a post width away from gifting his guests a draw at the death, right? And Azzurri also lacked the cutting edge, that Giroud, Leao, Hernandez showed so brilliantly to actually decide the game. But there is a silver lining, and Victor Osimhen will return from the African Cup of Nations, after the defeat in the final for potentially, his last few months in Naples, right? Because there's speculation that he will be joining Chelsea or either Manchester United, right? We yet to receive confirmation based on that. But yeah, it's not a secret that in the next in the next year or two, Victor Osimhen won't be a Napoli player. Yeah, that I can tell you. And it's not a secret. Even the Napoli manager knows that. Even the Napoli owner knows that. Because, another talking point that we could actually we need to look at very closely at, is that the fact that Napoli now, they find themselves in a situation where now the Mazzari experiment failed dismally, because now Napoli, they enjoyed the better of the opening exchanges with plenty of possession in AC Milan's half, but they were just too static, with the ball, as the hosts even defended in deep pockets. They defended in numbers, right? While Napoli actually struggled, to actually figure out, their shape-shifting opponents, right? And after the goal, they threatened to open the floodgates. It was all changed at halftime with Mazzari's substitutions, particularly effective. We saw Matteo Politano drop to the bench at the San Siro instantly. It improved his side's attacking threat, cutting in from the right flank like he often does, on his favorite left foot, with Kvaratskhelia, restored to the left to do the same in a breathless second half period. And, the further introductions, was Jasper Lindstrom as well as Matias Oliveira. They were also effective, and the Dane was just unlucky not to force an equalizer, with the Simic chance, but ultimately, Napoli, once again, they couldn't find the back of the net away from home. And that single goal scored by Theo Hernandez proved to be the only difference. And now that Napoli have got Barcelona coming up in the Champions League, they will certainly hope that Osimhen can provide that threat. And it's going to be an interesting one, And for the fact that, congratulations once again to Rafael Leao, who was crowned the man of the match, despite the fact that, he did everything right except put the ball in the back of the nets. But Leao, he was the heart of everything. And the hosts, secured a much-needed 3 points, you understand, in terms of whereby their title credentials are concerned, right? And look, Rafael Leao, he's more complimented by, a more deadly set of teammates in attack, than Kvaratskhelia, but ironically, he played the role that the Georgian was given, at kickoff better than, the Georgian himself, because Leao, found himself in space between defense and midfield throughout the game, and he always surged forward, with confidence when Milan did feed him with the ball, keeping his head up. And not only did he set up, the Hernandez winner, but also he did provide, some service to American forward Christian Pulisic, Olivier Giroud, as well as Ruben Loftus-Cheek. And with more chances, it could have actually been AC Milan could have won the game by 5, right? And you could tell that, it was just a matter of time that, maybe you thought they would actually put the second goal, wrap the game up, but unfortunately it wasn't meant to be, so hopefully AC Milan can actually work on that, in terms of them, being able to be more clinical in front of goal. And you could see that now, Rafael Leao's confidence is coming back up. And, this is the Rafael Leao we all know. Yeah, this is the Rafael Leao we all know. So, again, thank you so much, for your time. Thank you so much for watching this. And please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And we'll be in touch pretty soon. Cheers, man. Okay, remember now, tonight, Juventus will be taking on Udinese. And which is like basically a must-win encounter for Juventus, the Bianconeri, at the Allianz Stadium, because when you think back to Juventus' season opening win over Udinese, there's a lot of like great things that come to mind. It was at the time when we talked about as the new beginning for Max Allegri's squad after a 2022-2023 campaign full of off-the-field issues, points, penalties, as well as plenty of drama in the league, as well as in Europe. You remember Juventus also had 15 points deducted last season. But, in mid-August, we saw there was new tactics, a new look, Juventus side, a bright start who made a bright start to the new season. That certainly had like a lot of people excited about what they could actually produce, come the end of the season, right? What I can actually say is that, for Juventus, a lot has actually happened, in 5+ months, as well as, to the end of 2022, to the end of 2023, because we have seen like Serie A fixtures since these two faced one another, on the opening weekend of the season back in August. A lot of fans, said that, the month of January, in which Juve were beating up on the lower part of the Serie A table, those high-flying ways from Allegri's squad have been more or less replaced, with the same kind of, Koto Muso ways, And another thing what should also be noted is the fact that, like, we've seen Juventus, finish a match day at the top of the table, right, for the first time in a couple of years. So Juventus may or may not be able, to still be in the title race, depending on, how results go, depending on how they perform, and depending on the fact that if they are still going to be able to apply pressure on the log leaders, Inter Milan, right? Because, yeah, Juventus take on Udinese on Monday evening at the Allianz Stadium, and it's a must-win for both sides, right? In as much as it's actually a must-win encounter for Juventus, who suffered their second loss of the season last weekend, remember, right? And you look at two things, right? Two things actually come to mind when you think of this particular clash between Juventus as well as Udinese. Inter Milan made an extraordinary comeback, win over Roma on Saturday, which actually allowed them to actually open a 7-point gap, a 7-point gap at the top of the Serie A table. And AC Milan's slim win over Napoli on Sunday means that the difference between second place as well as third place is all of a single point, right? So only a single point separates Juventus in second place and AC Milan in third place. So, right, that's actually a sudden type of new development, and that's why Juventus really need to win in order for them to open up a bit of a gap, in order to at least go 4 points ahead of like third place AC Milan, who are actually creeping in, because the gap between second and third is actually shrinking, right? That's why Juventus really need to pull up their socks and get their act together if they are to keep up, with the pace, with the race for the title, right? Because Inter Milan are clearly making their intentions clear that they want to win this title, the league title once again, right? But what I can actually say is that, Juventus, right, of course, them creating some breathing room with AC Milan is actually needed, and I'm sure that's what Maximiliano Allegri would actually want, but it's not going to be an easy one. Remember, there's also a little piece of equation. We saw Juventus slip up just a couple of weeks ago against an Empoli side that, until the arrival of David Nicola, was where Udinese are right now. And we saw Juventus drop points against Empoli, thus opening the door for Inter to retake the lead in the Serie A before the Derby d'Italia. And now as Juventus enters into a situation where they need to avoid any potential slip-ups, because if they're in a scenario of any potential slip-ups, it could spell the end of their Scudetto race, right? Because they sincerely look to avoid what happened against Empoli when they face an Udinese squad that is very much on a struggle, based on where they began the season, right? And for the fact that they just parted ways with, their coach, Andrea Scottel, in late October, it hasn't actually resulted in stark improvement in form for a team that is just like, one of the worst in the league, when, you actually look at their points tally this season, right? But then with the fact that Gabriel Chioffi, has actually taken over. He brought back the club, and remember they parted ways with him in 2022. So with Empoli, Hellas, Verona both getting points, this weekend, Udinese is officially in the relegation zone come kickoff, on Wednesday night against the Bianconeri at the Allianz Stadium. And judging by their results, it is pretty understandable that they need victory, because remember, they've only just won one game since the first weekend of November, which was a 3-0 victory on December the 30th over Bologna, which currently sits in 5th place, right? So Udinese, it's a must win for them, just as much as it is, for Juventus, because it's a, let me just say this, right? It's a massive 6-pointer for both teams. You understand? It's a massive 6-pointer for Juventus as well as Udinese. They both need the results, right? They need the 3 points, right? Because for either of these sides, 3 points is non-negotiable, because not only is this Juventus's opportunity to get back on the horse, something that, Maximiliano Allegri, emphasized, during his press conference on Sunday, but also, to hopefully get some momentum going, again, and actually do what they, pretty much do all of January. Playing those types of opponents worked out quite well. And the more they can do that again means that, their hold on second place is actually there. But I'm sure a team like Juventus would actually want to compete for the league title, because at this point, Inter Milan, I don't think they're actually showing Inter Milan are actually showing us, any signs of actually slowing down, because currently now Inter Milan it seems like they're on a train that is actually, at full speed, that is at full gear. And it doesn't seem to be stopping anytime soon. So that's why I'm saying as for Juventus, man, they just need to get their act together and make sure they collect all 3 points. Because when you look at the latest in Juventus, from the Juventus camp currently, is the fact that, look, on Monday night it will be Massimiliano Allegri's 405th game in charge at Juventus, putting him level with Marcelo Lippi, for second on the club's all-time list behind, Giovanni Trapattoni, right? And the most notable injury news is that Dusan Vlahovic was not able to recover from the thigh injury he picked up during Juventus Derby d'Italia loss last weekend. And as well as it is also unclear just how much time Vlahovic might miss beyond the Udinese game, as he is still training away from the group, right? And thirdly, the other injured players are Mattia Dicilio, Moise Kean, as well as Mattia Perin, who picked up a right knee injury during training earlier this week. And Danilo is also suspended after picking up a yellow card against Inter, so it is still somewhat unclear, who will take his spot in the starting lineup between Daniel Rugani as well as Alex Sandro, right? And the two suspended midfielders, obviously Paul Pogba as well as Nicolo Fagioli, are still suspended. We could, however, be hearing, a Pogba suspension verdict in the next couple of days. So we've got that going for Juventus currently. Maybe we will see the return of Paul Pogba pretty soon. And I'm actually very excited for that because I really love Pogba, man. I admire him. I admire Pogba so much, his style of play. He's one of the greatest midfielders I've ever seen, right? I just think Manchester United was just not the cut for him. That was just a mistake. But look, I guess we hope to see the best of Pogba, the Pogba that we all, enjoyed watching before he actually, joined Manchester United on that record fee, remember. And another thing is that Allegri has also mentioned the fact that the January signing of Carlos Alcaraz, he actually made his Juventus debut last week, and he still isn't really ready to start after going through his first week of full training with the new team. So we'll actually see what kind of an impact he will actually make as he comes onto the pitch. And for the fact that Vlahovic and Keane are both injured, Leonardo Kitty will be called up from the next generation squad, to actually provide some depth, And despite the disappointing loss to Inter Milan last weekend, Massimiliano Allegri did say in the press conference that the team is actually in good shape mentally, and that there's no shortage of motivation to actually get back to winning ways on Monday night. We'll actually see that happening. We hope to see that happening because my prediction is a straight win for Juventus, 2-0 victory. But look, we cannot underestimate Udinese because Udinese need the victory just as much as the Bianconeri need it, right? So you just cannot underestimate anybody. So let's just say it. Juventus will be winning by 2-0. Please mention your predictions, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be in touch pretty soon, right? And remember, Champions League is back, ladies and gentlemen. Champions League will be back, as well as PSL action will be back. So we're going to actually unpack that right now. And guess what? Just guess what? Yo, Udinese just pulled off an incredible upset. So, Juventus 0, Udinese 1. That's an incredible upset. Because now, Juventus' title chances now have suffered a further blow. Thanks to Lautaro Giannetti, as he did stand the Bianconeri. So any hopes for Juventus, any hopes that Juventus had of actually winning the Serie A this season, seem to be all but over. After a 1-0 defeat to Udinese on Monday in Turin, Lautaro Giannetti poked home early in the first half, to actually score the only goal of the game. And basically that result, combined with Inter Milan's impressive 4-2 win away in the capital against Roma, as well as a 1-0 win in the Derby Italia last week, means the gap is now 7 points. Hey, this is interesting, man. this is about to get interesting because I'm even shocked as well because I was rooting for Juventus to actually win this game and dominate and win by 2-0. But hey, my prediction was incredibly wrong because currently now Juventus saw their Scudetto hopes, suffer a near fatal blow as now they have succumbed to a shock 1-0 defeat at home to Udinese. So that leaves the old lady 7 points adrift of leaders Inter Milan. And the Bianconeri boss, Massimiliano Allegri, was recognized for moving level alongside Marcelo Lippi in second place, on the all-time list of most appearances in the Juve dugout, prior to kickoff, but his team were far from the best throughout the contest. And that will go down as one of the surprises of this season. Because the hosts, remember, they were missing out on Dusan Vlahovic in attack, as well as Milik, who was punished for wasting their best openings, when Udinese January signing, Vélez Sarsfield, as well as Lautaro Giannetti knocked in a close range rebound on 25 minutes. And from that particular moment in time, Milik then had a goal correctly chalked off, on the hour mark for Juventus as an initial delivery from the right wing corner went out of play, and that was as close as the home team came to actually unlocking the visitors' rear guard. And the result now means that second place Juventus now suffer more woes, right? Following their Derby Italia defeat to Inter last time out, and they remain 7 points adrift of the leaders, having played a game more. And Udinese now climb up to 15th spot from relegation. You understand? A team that was just in relegation, prior to this kickoff at the Allianz Stadium, they are now in 15th spot. So it's incredible how 3 points can actually change so much. And that's only their third win of the season. And they are now like 3 points above the drop zone. So next up for Juventus is that they visit Hellas Verona on Saturday. And Udinese host Cagliari on Sunday. So that's crazy, man. That's just shocking. Yeah, Juventus just were nowhere near. They were just nowhere near. They didn't look like a team that is actually competing for the title. They looked far from a team that possesses any title credentials. They were just nowhere near in the game yesterday. Because look, if the Derby Italia win and Inter Milan's comeback successes over AS Roma didn't make the Nerazzurri overwhelming title favorites, then this surely does, because Juventus were fully expected to get back on track and actually put a struggling Udinese to the sword, but it wasn't to be. As they produced a turgid display with the absence of Vlahovic, Kingsley felt in attack. And currently now the Bianconeri, have lost just once, prior to their loss against Inter Milan. But back-to-back defeats mean that their Scudetto bid, appears to be crumbling fast, and it's hard to see beyond, Inter Milan currently. So, like I said, it was actually a must-win encounter for both these sides, both Juventus and Udinese. Because now for Udinese, they are out of the drop zone. As for Juventus, their title credentials are actually suffering a big blow with this defeat at home to Udinese. And I don't see any way back. It seems that Inter Milan are running away with it. They're running away with it. Because clearly, I don't see Inter Milan actually slipping up. I literally don't at all. I don't see Inter Milan slipping up at all. So, the Bianconeri have got themselves to blame. And it's back to the drawing board for them. They really need to bounce back away to Hellas Verona. Next Saturday. They need to bounce back. Hopefully Vlahovic will be back. And guess who was the player of the match? Deservedly so. Lautaro Giannetti. The man who scored the winning goal. The January signing from, Vélez Sarsfield is already established as a fan favorite. And he kept an excellent defensive display with the all-important goal, which will be long remembered by the club supporters. So, again, back to the drawing board for Juventus. Congratulations once again to Udinese. A deserved victory away from home. An unlikely victory. And this victory is a game changer. It's a season changer for them. It might turn out to be one of the most important victories in their season in terms of them, keeping their status in the top flight of Italian football. Right. Straight up. So I hope you guys really love this video, and please don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Ladies and gentlemen, tell me, who do you think is going to win the Italian Serie A this season, and who do you actually fancy being the top goal scorer in this year's Italian Serie A? Is it going to be Dusan Vlahovic? Is it going to be Lautaro Martinez of Inter Milan? You tell me. Give me your answers. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe once again. Bube Simpati Mhlaba once again. Football is a religion, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be in touch pretty soon. Hope you have a good day. Cheers.